Is Bitcoin maximalism the new religion? Since the Genesis block, Bitcoin maximalists have taken their devotion to extreme levels, forming what looks like a monetary cult. They've adopted theology around Bitcoin, believing in its code as a form of monetary salvation. These believers follow what I call the 13 pillars of Bitcoin philosophy, which pushes for widespread adoption with almost religious zeal. Is it right to see computer code as a pathway to a financial utopia? Let's talk about this. All right, so I want to take a quick minute and share some thoughts in relation to what's going on in the monetary realm, and in particular with coin, and how just the religious fervor, the religious zeal that's taking place is starting to intensify. And it has a lot to do with a documentary that was just released called God Bless Bitcoin. And just from the trailer alone, I even hinted at it last week as to how just within the first minute and a half or so of just listening to the trailer, so much spiritual connotation was mentioned that it really gave me it gave me goosebumps on some listening to these people, with good intentions, of course. Everybody in that space or in the crypto community space in general, they speak from what I believe a genuine, sincere nature to really see change. But then again, the change that they're looking to see has to do with computer code, and it has taken on an entire new life and a new ideology, philosophy, theology, all those ologies and isms, all within the last couple years. And this is all literally within a 15-year window of the Genesis block of Bitcoin. And so today I just want to share with you some things that caught my attention and just shine more light on how these times are very concerning, not only in the natural, but also in the spiritual, because I do believe it is possible things to creep into people's lives that will lead them to follow, a different mood, as well as just a different wavelength of energy. And that energy, unfortunately, can also be considered like more stuff from the dark side, from dark matter, and the spiritual side, or as I call it, the spirit of error. And so clearly something's going on here. And as I listen to more influential individuals talk about the spiritual side of things, when people mention about being in an environment with people that the feelings they get, and it brings out the best in them, and it makes them want to do this, and emotions and feelings, and I'm thinking, like, I thought they were just investing. I thought it was about investing and protecting your purchasing power from the dollar. And so, like, for me, being someone who is a monetary enthusiast in reference to encouraging people to get gold and silver, I don't never or really feel like I have taken on a emotional connection with silver and gold, and encouraging people to adopt it and come over to my side. And I mean, no, it's just I try to encourage you to take a look at history, and as you look throughout history, you realize where things always end up somehow, some way benefiting the holders of gold and silver. But that's where it stops. Like, I recognize that there's a limit to going too far, to where idolatry can creep in and people start to look at gold and silver or coin or whatever else as some type of, as I mentioned, monetary savior or something. And that's kind of where I think this whole Bitcoin narrative is going, because people, of course, with good intentions, are out here using words such as evangelism, adoption, all the words that's associated with the Christian faith, especially. And so real quick, I want to run through some headlines here, share with you some videos, and just highlight even more what I'm talking about. But before I do that, let me actually play for you.
Bitcoin economically arms everybody.
A means to fight tyranny, to fight corruption.
A central bank can be a place of great mischief.
My perspective is that Bitcoin does fix everything.
Bitcoin does represent freedom.
Bitcoin is truth.
Anyone can be a part of the Bitcoin economy. It's like a good church. Because it's an ethical ideology, there are many people who feel very spiritual about it.
I think that Bitcoin has those characteristics to be not just the most Islamic form of money, but the most Jewish and the most Christian form of money as well.
Bitcoin is just another step in the technological development of how we can serve God better.
It is trying to remove politics from money.
Bitcoin makes the world a better place.
And there's nothing you can do to stop it.
Nothing you can do to stop it. Okay, so with that in of itself, that is just a snippet of the intro. And I must admit, I have not watched the documentary, so I don't want to go too deep down a rabbit hole, but just from the trailer itself is what I'm addressing. And so you got, Tim Draper, I think is that his name, talking about a good church. You got, spiritual truth. You got, philosophy. I mean, all those buzzwords that, just catches me by surprise. That doesn't catch me by surprise, but it causes some concern that I wanted to just put out there real quick. And so I'm like, okay, let me figure out, if Bitcoin has taken on the way of bringing people together and unifying the masses and getting people on the same page with the common goal of working towards something that's supposed to be outside of government control. And, it was initially labeled as something that was going to be, anti-government, anti-this and anti-banking. But now we're at the point now where, based upon this past conference, we had all the institutions there, and this was like, it just seems very spooky. And, I can say that. So someone might be saying, Michael, you're just a hater, or whatever. But I'm saying I've been watching Bitcoin since 2013. So I've been in this space for quite some time now, 11 years, and I've witnessed the evolution of it from disruption to adoption to now spooky. And that's the part I'm talking about, because I have my personal opinions, of course, but I just don't see how computer code is going to save the world, especially when it takes on this type of religious fervor. But anyway, so what I want to share with you is just some things that caught my attention in reference to some headlines here. So here's a headline that came out a couple years ago, but once again, like just the fact that somebody would write this, and this is from Bitcoin Magazine by 𝗦𝗢𝗟𝗟𝗓𝗪. But is Bitcoin a religion? If not, it soon could be. Like, is that supposed to be a good thing? But then again, what they're saying, the adoption and the evangelical efforts by a lot of the maximalists and influencers had led people to jump on board. So that's just the title alone caught my attention. And then the next title here is, it says here, 10 shared beliefs of a Bitcoin maximalist. And it talks about, real quick, and then I'll get into what I consider the 13 Bitcoin philosophies that are the 13 pillars of what Bitcoin maximalists ultimately believe and stand for. And so here it just says, Bitcoin must be safeguarded from future generations. Fiat currencies are reckless and mismanaged. We got open source software is key. And so anyway, the headlines will caught my attention. 10 shared beliefs, Bitcoin maximalist. And then the last one here is, it says, how to be a Bitcoin maximalist. And so this came out 2 years ago, and this is from Forbes magazine. And so outside of these smaller blog type news sources, all the way to Forbes, and then you see a scene from the movie Batman where they got all the currency burning. I understand the intentions of what Bitcoin was initially supposed to be, but clearly at this point, I'm sure people can see that something's changed, and where it's heading is what I'm concerned with. Because once again, once the government gets involved, if the government takes on a strategic reserve of Bitcoin, they will then have a guaranteed interest, a national security interest, to make sure that they protect their investment, which will be taxpayer funds to acquire those Bitcoins or maintain the stolen Bitcoins they have now. But then, as I mentioned earlier during the live stream, is that they're going to then get involved down to the actual consensus level with influencing the developers and the mining space. And so, of course, people might say, well, there's nodes, there's mining rigs all across the world. They won't really impact it much. But you better believe, and how could you not think, that if the U.S. gets involved and they decide that there is a national threat overall in allowing governments to set up their CBDCs, that they won't come together in a joint effort with some type of global resolution on how to divide Bitcoin asset, the tokenized asset department. Because Trump was very clear. He looks at the space not as a singular entity such as Bitcoin. He said others, Bitcoin, and cryptocurrency, or cryptocurrency, coin, and others. So he clearly knows that there's an entire ecosystem that his advisors, people in his ears, are telling him and influencing him and encouraging him to position policies, if he becomes president again, to be able to roll those things out. And Bitcoin is just what the politicians are using to dangle, the influencers and the maxis on a string, getting them getting them all hyped up, thinking that, there's going to be a cryptocurrency council that will actually be of people from the public sector. Come on now. But anyway, so real quick here, as I mentioned here, here's a quick look at the actual God Bless coin that is out there. So the actual God Bless coin, if I'm not mistaken, it's a husband and wife, a team that put it together. And just based upon the husband and wife doing the touring, I did see the intro of one particular video, and in the intro to the individual's video, the what I believe is the husband referenced that, the whole documentary came about because I believe he said he felt led to create this. And ultimately, he said his goal was that, he prays that, God would bless Bitcoin to help free and to help provide his children, his people, with options outside of this monetary chaos of the world we live in. And so what initially led me to want to talk about this was based upon that quick snippet from the creators of the documentary on their reason for creating the documentary, to further shine a highlight on Bitcoin, to make it more, known, and to get it out there more, and to ultimately bring in more people, to evangelize more people for adoption's sake. And I'm thinking, like, at this current moment, given everything the world's facing, our monetary situation is important, but it's not the most important thing we're experiencing, because, we're in the midst of an entirely global restructuring of all systems, politically, society-wide, you name it. Money, of course, is a symptom of, a hijacked government crisis we're experiencing. But I'm also thinking, like, okay, with all this attention being placed on technology, computer code, cryptographic technology, I think it's taken on that feeling and desire that people have to cling to something as if it will alleviate problems or save them from something. So like a lot of people I see out here, mention, just get one Bitcoin and you'll be set for life. And then you have Michael Saylor doing his previous Bitcoin talk, throwing out some figures that are so astronomically large that it would only convince anybody, to be willing to take that gamble just to get one coin or something of that magnitude, because the end reward for doing that would be, you're going to be rich. But once again, it's all priced in USD. And so if Bitcoin goes to $49 million, like Michael Saylor says, what world would you live in where you'll actually be able to use that money for something? Because it's not even money. It's the death of the dollar is the result of an astronomically high coin or any type of crypto price. Because of course you better believe, gold and silver will also probably be somewhere in that ballpark figure as well, if we see Bitcoin at those type of figures. So it won't be in a normal world. And so those are just some things that really caught my attention. But real quick, I want to end this by sharing with you what I believe are the 13 pillars of the Bitcoin philosophy or Bitcoin maximalist philosophy. And so I just was curious, based upon all this energy that's being given, I decided I would just look some things up and see if it was a religion, then what would some of the pillars of the faith be? And of course, in Christianity and in all religions, they all have some do's and don'ts type of structure to set up boundaries for which people can operate within to be devout and faithful for that particular religion there. And so, but ultimately, here are the 13 pillars that I would probably be willing to say, and let me know if I have any maximalists checking in, but this is what I often hear when it comes to Bitcoiners talking about how there is no other than this one and only, and all that type of stuff. But real quick, I said if Bitcoin maximalist was a religion, or Bitcoin maximal was a religion, what would be the tenets of the belief? Describe the theology of Bitcoin. And so this is in perplexity. And the answer was, if Bitcoin Maximalism was a religion, its core tenets and theology could be described as follows. Number one, Bitcoin is the one true digital currency created by prophet Satoshi Nakamoto. And so that's a little, out there, but then again, bear with me here. The Bitcoin white paper is the sacred text akin to holy scripture. There's a lot of people who love referring to that white paper as if like that is the basis of, and it describes everything, even though it mentions peer-to-peer, and somehow we got on the digital gold narrative. Next one, decentralization and censorship resistance are permanent virtues. So making sure it's decentralized and censorship resistant, permanent virtues. Proof of work is the only valid consensus mechanism viewed as essential and sacred. Number 5, hodling, long-term holding of Bitcoin, is a form of devotion and faith. Just this past weekend, former President Trump said, don't sell your Bitcoin. Michael Saylor says, don't sell your Bitcoin. So if everybody buying and holding, at some point, if the money doesn't circulate, then what happens to them? What happens to the fees and all the things that required to keep the businesses running on top of that? And it says here, the halving events are like religious holidays or rituals. And so you better believe every 4 years, the coin halving, all of YouTube, all the videos talking about this time after the halving, 12, 18 months after the halving, we see a bull run. It's been going according, and they show you all these graphs, everything trending upwards. So once again, like that's a major part of the narrative. And then here, 7, fiat currency and central banks are seen as corrupt and evil forms to be overcome. And so just this weekend, everybody's talking about the problems. The problem is Federal Reserve, the debasement of the dollar, our government not having any type of accountability, pointing the blame at everything. And ultimately, it's the result of bad governance. Hyperbitcoinization, the belief in a eventual global adoption of Bitcoin, is the ultimate salvation. Open source code and self-custody of coins are righteous practices. Bitcoin is for everyone, and there's a missionary zeal to spread adoption. You better believe there's a lot of people. And speaking of which, let me just share with you a couple things here.
The great equalizer in many ways. And what I've been thinking about lately is Bitcoin as a spiritual path toward a certain state of spiritual consciousness, which is something that's always been in the mind of all humans throughout our existence here on this planet. We have always either been in accordance or in discordance with a spiritual presence. And Bitcoin is now giving us that ability to achieve a spiritual harmony that was only touched upon infrequently throughout the past and has been tough to sustain. Obviously, with religions and various religions, the idea is to make a spiritual connection. But the problem with religions is the same problem you have with fiat money, in that they're centralized. And anytime you have a centralized organization, you are not availing yourself to the benefits of having a decentralized paradigm or decentralized system. And so I recently talked about my experience in Alcoholics Anonymous, for example, where I'm celebrating 36 years of continuous sobriety in AA. And AA is kind of decentralized spirituality, is what I've come to understand. Because
Satoshi is going to be, one of the greatest human, he's just one of the greatest human beings ever. He's almost like a Christ-like figure in my view. In terms of what he created and gave to us, because it's going to have that large an impact. So, my view is just forget about the price, buy what you can, sit back, enjoy your life, try and tell other people. Because again, to get to where we want to B, we have to get the consensus of the people to see what we see and to understand that sound money is the answer.
Okay, so right then and there we have Max Kaiser sharing his testimony of how Bitcoin has a spiritual essence to it, and then we have Lawrence Lepard also sharing his beliefs that Satoshi is like a Christ-like figure, and that the good thing is to stack sats and then share it with other people, encourage other people. Like, so literally that's like ultimate evangelism. But back to my point. And then last couple pillars here. It says here, for everyone, the Genesis block is revered, and early adopters like Hal Finney are viewed as saints. I don't know who Hal Finney is. Hard money principles and sound monetary policies are our doctrines. It says rejection of false idols in the form of altcoins and competing cryptocurrencies. It says here, this theology frames Bitcoin as a path to financial sovereignty and freedom from corrupt monetary systems, with true believers committed to its long-term success and global adoption. And so there you have what would be considered the 13 pillars of Bitcoin maximalism, more so the theology, the ideology towards how to achieve financial sovereignty through computer code. And so this is just me sharing some thoughts with you in reference to how concerning this should be. And especially if you are a believer in Christ, and be very careful that you don't allow this religious zeal and excitement of profiting off of the destruction of our fiat currency system, and you thinking that somehow, some way, that by buying and holding gold, silver, coin, or whatever, that you're immune from the effects that will impact life, and that you can take any of this with you in the end. No. And so instead of encouraging people to go out and push maximalism and Bitcoin and whatever else that might be of interest to you, don't lose sight of what's more important, and that is to serve the one and true only God, Yeshua HaMashiach, Jesus Christ. So anyway, just wanted to share this, and curious to get your thoughts. Kind of long, but anyway, just thought I would just, rant a little bit, share my 2 cents. But curious to hear what you guys think. What do you think about the 13 pillars? Are they on point for the Bitcoin maximalists, or are they a little too far-fetched? But anyway, if you found value, hit that thumbs up. Share this, and feel free to share this with your favorite, crypto influencer or whoever, and just give them something to think about. Because once again, I've been around for quite some time, and all of those 13 bullet points, they fit in somewhere with the narratives that maximalists love to push. So be careful. But anyway, catch you guys later. Peace.